Hey everybody, what's going on? This is wilkyb, and this video is just a follow-up from my previous video talking about how turn-based strategy in the year 2026 and all years previous to the year 2026, turn-based strategy has not been competitive. It's not as competitive as it could be, which is kind of funny because the map designer on Advance Wars has the potential of making some really amazing, complicated maps with a lot of potential to them. And I've made one of those kinds of maps, and there's more to be made. But that kind of map is very unpopular in this community. The kinds of maps that are popular in this community is 2 base, 1 infantry. And that style of map has been popular for like 15 years on this website. The meta of this game hasn't changed very much, and across the entire genre, the maps are made the same way. I can't help but notice that whenever a new game is made in this genre, that people will just reproduce the maps that were made on Advance Wars by Web, and then they just play the same maps on the new game that's been released. So, consistently, I see that across the entire board. Wargroove, Warside, not Athena Crisis, because I haven't played that. But yeah, all these games, they all just reproduce maps from Advance Wars by Web, which just kind of begs the question, like, why are you even playing a new game if you've just got Advance Wars by Web that you can play? It's really hard to change things in this community because the map committee is just really lazy and they get in the way of things. When I introduce my standard of proof to the map committee, they just ignore me and they drag my reputation through the mud because they want to uphold the kinds of maps that they develop that are really boring and the meta hasn't shifted for 15 years. The evolution of the map designer in Advance Wars is being held back by the map committee, which is too bad, and this is a really awkward conversation to have with them. They're lazy, and it's not that they're lazy, because they put together this website that people are playing, and they'll tell you that their maps are competitive, and people who play on their maps will tell you that they're competitive. But these are all the same people who won't produce a replay to back up the things that they're saying. So it's just really funny, because like I've said in my previous videos, replays are physical phenomena that you can use to measure the complexity of a map using the standard of proof that I've developed over the past couple of years. But this standard of proof, if you use it against a map committee map, it'll just make it look bad. The standard of proof that the map committee and this genre, this community overall, they use descriptions from people who are high-rated ELO players. But I insist that the maps that high-rated ELO players on, the kinds of maps that high-rated ELO players play on, are just not very complex, and you can only do like 1 or 2 different lines, and there's just not a whole lot of complexity to it, like at all. You basically just develop these maps to the center of the map through turns 1 through 10, and there's no pressure from your opponent at all. You don't have to worry about being rushed or having your economy messed with. If you do the correct line every game, there's no different thing to do on map committee maps. My maps are very different than this. There's lots of different openers that pair up against your opponent's different openers, and they go equally. And people are just overwhelmed by the number of lines on my map. People are very... they don't like change. They don't like maps being more complicated than what they can imagine. And people are not very imaginative in this community, in this genre. Even when I introduce the kind of map that I have, that has a standard of proof, where I can prove these things, people are just not interested in it because it's a lot of work. There's a lot of work that's been put into Advance Wars by Web, and the people who run that website run the map committee. And the amount of work that they've put into developing that website is probably equal to the amount of work that I've put into my standard of proof and the kinds of maps that I make today. But unfortunately for me, they control the website, so the more complex maps just don't prevail because I don't own the assets of the website. So Yeah, so anyways, these are big claims that I'm making and stuff, and I wish the map committee would communicate with me and prove me wrong or something. But every time it goes down to the path of proof, the proof always refers to the opinions of people who are high-rated ELO players on Advance Wars by Web, which the crux of what I'm saying is that the maps that you're playing on aren't very complex. So it's funny because I'll get like 15 or 1600 rated players. Most of them will say that my map is broken, and then they won't back up the things that they say with a replay. And then if they do back up the things that they say with a replay, I can disprove the replay that they've provided to me. So it's just really awkward. It's so funny because it's funny because people in scientific communities, like gaming communities, are kind of scientific. Like, you're trying to do the best possible opener. You're doing optimal things. People in this community that is supposed to be scientific, they don't rely on physical phenomena. They describe things that they see, but they don't really measure what they're doing with replay analysis. And if they started to measure the complexity of maps using my standard of proof, it would make them look bad. So there's a really funny thing that's going on here. So like in my videos, this is in communication to people who are interested in developing turn-based strategy, because my ideas just get shut down and my reputation gets dragged through the mud by people, like I said, who put a lot of work into Advanced Wars by Web, but their maps are just really boring. Like, they're to the complexity of like Connect 4. Which is funny because Connect 4, you can see it with your eye that it's a pretty simple game, but the map committee maps, they look more complicated than they actually are. There's only 1 or 2 or 3 lines that you can take, and you'll figure that out with time, and people will tell you that the maps are good, and they're just not. They're just not, and they can't back them up with replays. They can't back them up. So there's a huge community that just doesn't like reviewing replays, and they don't like being scientific. That's it. So that's the reality of turn-based strategy in 2026. There's a huge wave of people who just want to reproduce the shitty maps that have been made in this genre for the past 25 years. That's it. And they don't want things to change, and it's really weird. It's just really weird. So anyways, game developers, it's weird because if you're developing a game and you want it to return some money to you, you don't actually have to do anything about making your game more PvP oriented. And actually, what I observe with games that are being released since Advance Wars is that fewer and fewer of them are released appealing to PvP, because Advance Wars by Web already does PvP the best and for free. So why would a studio want to invest money in hosting PvP services when people just transfer maps from Advance Wars by Web to this new game anyways that doesn't host PvP as well as Advance Wars by Web? So there's a thing going on that just begs the question. Games are being reproduced, and the same maps are being reproduced because the community leaders are doing that. They're shoving these maps down the throats of game designers, and unfortunately, game designers don't actually know what constitutes a competitive map. And if you say differently to what the community says, then you'll just, in my experience, I've been treated very poorly. So I hope that game designers don't feel that kind of pressure, because I think the community are actually really much more appreciative of people who design games rather than people who manipulate the map designer within their game, like me. Because there's not a lot of work that goes into producing a map compared to the kind of work that goes into developing a game, right? So I'll end the video on that there. Yeah, I'll end the video there. So that's what I think, and thanks for listening, and like and subscribe and join the Discord if you'd like me to introduce my standard of proof to you, and I can show you how it works on my map, and you'll see how my map is complex the way that I sort of describe it in this video. I'd even be willing to use my standard of proof on a map committee map with somebody who's interested in what I'm talking about. And it'll be interesting for me, and it'll be interesting for you. We'll probably both learn some things. But I find that people just are disgusted by this process of producing replays and like trading replays back and forth. What happens in this community is when people make a criticism of my kind of map, then what they'll do is they'll write a wall of text that's just really negative about me and my map and saying things that are not true that I can disprove with a replay. And then when I compel people to produce a replay to back up the things that they're saying, they'll produce like one replay that their friend made, and then I'll produce a replay that disproves the thing that they've shown to me in that replay, and then they just write another wall of text about all the reasons why I'm wrong, which is like they're not replying to the replay that I've replied to them with. So yeah, so if you submit replays that you expect people to interpret accurately, that's just not going to happen, because it goes against the opinions of the high-rated ELO players, which is the method that people use to prove if a map is complicated or complex, which is bad. It's based on opinion and description, and a lot of what I'm saying is based on opinion and description as well. But that the opinion and descriptions are based off of measurements and things that can be displayed to you through replays that you can then describe and trade replays. Like, to actually get to the complexity of a map, you need to trade at least like 50 replays with somebody to really, not 50, but you need to produce a lot of replays to actually get down to the complexity and what makes a map complex, and if that map is just completely broken. Like, there's so much stuff that goes into making a map that people they're afraid of investigating. So be brave. Come join my Discord and be brave and do things that aren't popular but are more complex and really artistic. Not to toot my own horn here, because I know how much people hate that. But it's funny because the map committee will toot their own horn without evidence, and people will gobble it up. And then when I toot my own horn with all of the evidence in the world, people don't want to communicate with me. So it's just really funny. So I'll end on that note. Okay, guys, like and subscribe, be brave, and join the Discord. Okay, thanks. Cheers.